Hey, do you need help making your essays meet the length? Do you have a student in high school or homeschool that's having trouble meeting length on their essays? Are you just a college student that needs to figure out, how do I write these things a little bit longer? I don't know. I've never figured it out. Well, then this video is for you. This video is not for people that just want to put it into AI and have it do it for them. I want to teach people how to write well, and I want to teach you the secrets of writing and put writing in a better frame for you. Writing seems to be very subjective, but it is, but it's also not. There are specific things that you can do and specific skills and parts of writing that you can learn to learn how to manipulate words better. You can write better. And so today I'm going to teach you one way or one thing you can do in the planning process to make writing essays easier, make your essays better, and more easily meet that word count. And so if you are actually wanting to learn how to write or wanting to figure out how to help your student write better and learn how to write longer, better essays, then this video is for you. Stick around and check it out. Are you a parent with a teenage student that's having trouble meeting essay length in school or in homeschool? Are you a student or in high school or college that's having trouble meeting essay length? You get writing the essay, your kid gets writing the essay, and they just run out of things to say, and they say they've covered all of the topics, and it's just not long enough still. Well, there are a few things that affect that and a few tricks to use to fix that problem, but today I'm just going to be talking about topics and topic choice. Topic choice and how you focus your topic really is a big deal for how much you have to say about the essay, about the topic in the essay. If you have a vague topic, well, it ends up being a lot harder. So let's go through some of the stuff that I have on the screen. So this is an example of a brainstorming section of notes from a possible student. And that student is working on an argumentative essay. And they came up with some ideas, and then they chose technology and society, as you can see there. And then they brainstormed some possible subtopics for their paper, some things to research. Okay, so this is a vague topic example. So we're going to go through the bullet points that the student might have, and then we're going to talk about why vague topics don't work, the problems with them. All right, so technology and society. The things that the student had. Technology has changed everything about how we live. Okay, yeah, that's true, but can you see how broad that is? That in itself is not part of an argument, right? It's an observation. So that's the first problem. And that stems directly from the topic idea being too vague. Next, social media. Good or bad? Question mark? Both probably. Yeah, that's another problem that I have 10 years teaching students how to write and looking at writing and asking myself, all right, they didn't understand this. How can I make this writing skill more understandable for them? And I've been thinking about that. I'm also a fiction author, and so one of the things I nerd out about is how does writing work? How do words do the things that they do? And how do I explain that to other people, or how do I understand it enough to make the words do what I want them to do? And so with that experience, I can look at these things and I can see what's going on here, and I can tell you what's going on behind the scenes. Really, so like with social media, good or bad? Probably both. We'll see some other bullet points here that do the same thing, but it is an indecision. And in an argumentative essay, yeah, you argue the other side for a minute in the counterclaim, but you need to make a decision about a side that you're going to look at. And you really don't even have to agree fully with that side, but you need to have a focus. If you don't have a focus, it's really hard to get started. Next, people are addicted to phones. That's an issue. Why? And we're going through a lot of different topics here, and what's this paper really going to be about? That's the question I have as I'm looking at this. Also, AI is a big thing now. Jobs might be affected. Okay, another really broad topic. Could talk about how technology connects people but also isolates them. True, you could, but why does that matter? It's a question I asked my students a lot when they were coming up with topics, or even in really small, concise, analytical, quick write things that they did, quick write essays or just quick writes, I would ask them, why? Why does that matter? Even in down to just a 1 or 2 sentence fill in the blank answer or like short answer, I would ask in my comments to them, why does this thing you're saying matter? If you don't have the why it matters, then you don't really have a direction to go. Next, privacy stuff too. Companies collecting data. Well, all of these are really huge topics. I hope that you can see the problems that a really vague overall topic presents already. Like, we're already getting so much going on. How would you even go about turning this into an essay? Well, it would be really hard if you were trying to take all of these bullet points and turn them into one essay altogether. It's just not going to work out. Kids and screen time, question mark. Okay, yeah, that's like the fact that there are 2 question marks there. If I was looking at a student's brainstorming and they just weren't sure what to do, I would see that and say, oh, you put 2 there because you're curious about it. This is probably something that you should dig into, and you should probably find a more specific topic just on that one. Next, maybe focus on how technology affects mental health. Maybe. Or it could go into more education, technology in classrooms. Yeah, if you're interested in that. There's so much to say about this, honestly. Yeah, and that's your problem here. All right, here's their possible thesis. Technology has both positive and negative effects on society. Yeah, that's an observation. Remember, we're trying to write an argument, meaning that we need to take a stance. We need to see something, have an opinion about it, and then go through and discuss how that opinion is valid. And try and prove something, try and persuade so that other people maybe agree with our opinion. This is not taking that stance. This is because there's just so much going on there, so many things to talk about. This is just looking at it and saying, oh yeah, well, it has some effects. Great. Why do we care? Okay. All right. So let's talk about problems with the vague topic. We already kind of have, but let's go over some. There are too many choices. Okay, this topic, when you have a vague topic, really you haven't found a topic yet. This is like your interest area, technology and society. That's not the topic. That's the interest area. You really need to narrow down and focus. Okay, there are too many choices. And I know I've seen so many students think that, oh, well, I need to leave my topic really broad so that I have enough to say. And that's always their excuse to me. But that's not the case. It's actually counterintuitive. If you have too many choices, what ends up happening is all of the information you're trying to find, once you do find it, and it takes longer because you're not really sure what to really start looking for because there's so many choices. If you have so many choices, then you end up putting a bunch of really short summaries that don't go into any depth or say anything interesting or informative or even anything that matters, really. And you take all of those summaries about disparate topics and hodgepodge them together, and you have just this mishmash that ends up being too short. It always happens like that, or else it's just a bunch of really small, almost paragraphs that are kind of terrible put together, and they've taken forever to meet the length, but it's terrible. Okay? It's not a cohesive paper when this happens. It's because there's just too much there. Okay? You really need to narrow down. It really does become harder to write a paper or an essay or even a short answer if you are looking at too broad of a topic. You need to narrow down and focus and find something that you are really interested in or at least curious about. If you look at something and maybe you're not super interested in it, you have a topic given to you from a teacher or a prompt, and you're like, I don't really care about this, but you just first need to find a way to be curious about something about it. Some small aspect at it. If you can just get a little curious, then you can write a better paper. But that curiosity should lead you into writing something more specific, looking at something more specific and focused. And then you'll get more curious about it, and it really lends to a better paper. Maybe you never end up loving it or being like, oh, wow, that was fun. But you'll go to the end and you'll be like, I learned something. And that's because of the curiosity, but that comes from focusing down. So as you can see in the thesis, there's no argument to be made here. I already talked about that. There isn't an argument. ultimately, this would be a really vague, terrible expositional essay, maybe, mostly just observational. And it's not going to be good. It's going to be a whole bunch of topics. Nobody's going to be interested in it, let alone the student that's writing it. No, it's going to be bad. Right? And once again, the student's going to get muddled because there's so many things that could be looked up. What are you going to choose? How are you going to choose what to look up first? Where are you going to take this first? There's too many big things going on here. There is no clear direction. And this is one of the reasons a lot of my students, I know for a fact, would sit there unsure what to research, unsure what to type, unsure where to go with it, because they were still in a vague topic that they weren't interested about, and they didn't know where to go first. And they'd start now researching like social media, whether it's good or bad, and they get bored, and then they'd go, well, maybe addicted to phones, and then they'd get bored, and then, oh, kids and screen time, and then they just get confused, and then they get bored, and then they stop and just mess around instead. There's just too much. And since there is no argument, you can't even make a counter argument. Technology has been both positive and negative. Well, okay, it hasn't been. It's only been positive. That would be the counter, I guess. Or it's only been terrible, but that's a terrible counter. It just doesn't work. So you have to actually have a focused topic to make a thesis, to even to be able to have an argument and then have a counter argument about it. And lastly, and really most importantly, it's boring. When we go so vague and so general, it's boring. I've read tons of essays like this. I glaze over partway through, and I force myself to kind of look through them when I've been grading them, but generally I get to the end, I'm like, well, that's a C, but I can't remember it because it was terrible. Okay, as a teacher, as an English teacher in high school, I've read so many essays. Unless they are actually somewhat good, I can't keep them in my head for long. I can keep them in my head long enough to grade them, and I can be like, oh, it's about a B. I give them the grade, and then when they come back, and it doesn't happen very often, when they do come back and ask me, I have to go back and look at it because it was so bad, I cannot remember it. Because I've just read so many that muddle together. Muddle, see, like I put up there? It happens. So it's boring. And if it's boring for you writing it, it's going to be boring for me as the teacher grading it. And yeah, maybe it's not going to be the most exciting thing ever, but it can at least be interesting if you focus on the curiosity aspect of it. And so it can be at least interesting and curious, if not fun. And so it's important because if you are being curious and you're at least finding some interest in it, then you will write a better essay and you will be looking and finding some really cool things. And maybe you won't love it, but it'll be a lot better than it's been in the past. I can guarantee that. All right, so we've talked about what happens with a vague topic. Now let's go down and let's talk about specific topics. All right, so let's see if we can figure out why focusing down and finding something really super specific actually helps you write a better essay and write more about it. It's really because you're getting curious, because you're like, oh, well, what about this thing? And oh, well, that little piece is interesting. And oh, wow, this makes me think of this other thing. Curiosity for this is important, and you can't have curiosity if it's too vague. Okay, you need to focus down into something, some small aspect of it that you're like, oh, wow, what about this? You just start with, oh, you're curious, and you're asking a question about it. And you're like wondering, and that should be the indication that, this is the topic I should pick. So if the student had taken this before topic as a category and then found one of these, I was interested about that, and gone into that specific thing they were interested about, this is what they could have come up with. Should colleges ban laptops in lecture halls? So much more specific. We're looking at technology in a very specific instance. And you would think that just looking at that at first, if you don't understand writing or you're not sure how this works out, you're going to be like, well, I'm not going to have much to say about that. No, you are going to have more to say about it. If you're curious about it. If you are not curious about this topic, you should pick one that you're curious about. But if you are curious about this, if you have experience with this even, then you are going to have a lot to say. It works out so much better. So let's go through some of these, and hopefully you'll see how it works out. You really need to be more specific with your topic, and you need to be curious with it. Okay? Curiosity. That's one of the important things, but you don't have that if it's too vague. All right, first bullet point. Studies show how handwriting notes equals better retention than typing. And then they also cite a study that they've already found. And so we can already see that if you have some very specific topic that you are curious about, you've probably already started collecting good sources to use. You're like, oh, wow, that was cool. And you put it down. And it works out fast. And you have this very specific idea, so a counter argument can already show up. And there's 2 of them listed here. One counter argument. Laptops are faster, easier to organize, and searchable. Oh, look how easy that counter argument was to find. Because thinking about the specific instance of a college student in a lecture hall, what's going to be easier for them? Having a bunch of papers and having to write it out slow and like use sticky notes and tabs to organize it, or it's going to open up a file and they can type it in and color code it and shift it around. Yeah, that's totally true. That counter argument completely works, and we're able to find it, and it's really good, a really good counter argument, something that definitely needs to be considered because we're so focused with our topic. And then there's another one too. If you'll find that if you have a really good topic, there's tons of things that really need to be considered because nothing is like straight down the middle. There's always 2 sides to the story. The second one, students with disabilities may need laptops and accommodations. It's important to address it. Yeah, you're right. And that came from looking at the first one. Well, laptops are faster and easier. Well, if students have disabilities, they may need to have one. So maybe you can't outright ban it. Oh, and look, and then they're also now thinking about the counter to the counter, the rebuttal, as I like to call it, or as I tell my students, the nuh-uh to the nuh-uh, because you have this argument you're making, and you get to the counter argument, and the counter argument, somebody else that's been listening to you is like, nuh-uh, because this. And then you listen to their side, and then you say, well, nuh-uh, because this other thing, remember? And so it's the nuh-uh to the nuh-uh, that's the rebuttal, the counter. Nuh-uh to the nuh-uh. And the students always laughed when I said that, but they remembered. Okay, so the counter to the counter, you could allow exceptions for accommodations without like lifting the ban entirely. Yeah, certain students just need that accommodation, just like not everybody in the class needs a wheelchair, but somebody might. And everybody else isn't going to be like, well, I wish I had a wheelchair and I'm going to bring one to class. No, most people are like, no, that's fine. They totally need it. Okay, so that's a good counter. Next, the multitasking angle. Even if you don't get distracted, the laptop next to you distracts other people. Yeah, or your laptop distracts other people next to you. And, oh, look, they said there's a study on that too. Peripheral distraction. See, it's so much easier and faster to find evidence. And you can see that if you're curious about it, wow, you're going to find some really interesting things to talk about. You're going to have plenty to say. Next, professors who ban laptops report better class discussion and engagement. It's anecdotal. There needs to be real data. Oh, that is a talking point. You can use anecdotal evidence. You can use quotes from professors, and then you can talk about how real data could be found. Or just you can talk about their situations, and like it really lends to a good discussion in your essay. Could narrow further as the next bullet point. Just first-year intro courses or all courses? Wow, that's an excellent question, and I would actually leave that. I wouldn't even put that in the main essay. I would leave that as the extension at the end. I tell my students a good way to end their paper at the end of the conclusion is to provide an extension. If there was going to be a part 2 to your essay, what would it be? And that's really the only place I like them to put questions into their essay, rhetorical questions, because rhetorical questions, you have to answer them. I'd rather have a direct statement from you as the writer. But at the end, if you're extending, you could ask at the end of this paper, well, should this be limited to only first-year intro courses, or should it be extended as a ban to all courses across all years of higher ed? That's a great question. There's a whole essay in itself there. So then they get their thesis, and you look at this thesis. It's so much better and more interesting than the first one. And it's really been helped to narrow down. It's been helped to create this as the student has gone through all these bullet points. So this thesis, colleges should ban laptops in introductory lecture courses because they reduce both individual retention and collective classroom management, with accommodations carved out for students who need them. Like, this is just a draft. It could totally be improved, but oh, that's so much better and so much more interesting. We have so much to talk about here compared to up here when it was so vague that what direction are we even going to go in? And there's not a chance there in a short argumentative school essay to get into each one of these in any depth and find anything interesting. But if we focus on one, look how many interesting things we found. Like, this is curiosity weaponized for your essay. So cool. So here are the benefits, and I hope you can already see them, but I'm gonna go through them. So the specificity has already lent itself to interesting and usable research. We talked about that. If you are curious as you're just looking stuff up, you're going to start seeing things, and you're already going to put down ideas. The research is going to be so much faster and easier. Next, there's a clear path forward that gets refined further as the brainstorming process goes. It's almost like writing a story and planning a story. As you get curious about it and you get really specific about what's going on in your story and where it's set, you kind of build the plot as you go, as you plan this out, and it becomes something more than you anticipated. As a writer, I have 5 books, and yeah, that happens all the time. And it happens with papers too and research. As you get into something, you find really interesting things, and it changes your thought process and refines it. The thesis is super focused and be a strong guide for the paper. And that's what a thesis should be. It is, number one, a roadmap for the reader to say, hey, this is what we're talking about, and this is what you should watch for. This is what I'm going to say. And then throughout the whole paper, that thesis should guide all of the stuff so that the reader can be like, yeah, that's totally what you said, and I agree. Or, yeah, that's totally what you said, I disagree, but I know what you said. And for you as the writer, it's a guide as well. That thesis should point you in the direction of what you should do. If you have the thesis here, the second thesis, you know all of the things from this vague brainstorming section that are not going to fit and you're not going to include in the paper. And you can even vet out things here that don't fit into the paper as well in your research for it. So it's a guide. This paper is going to be cohesive and persuasive. There's going to be awesome facts. Sorry if you can hear the cars going by. There's going to be awesome facts and awesome things to talk about. All right? You are going to persuade people with this paper because you have some interesting things to say. Next, a strong counter-argument has already been addressed. 2 of them, actually. Talked about that. And super important, it's interesting. It's interesting to the person writing it, and like, as somebody looking, as a teacher looking at this and going, wow, you found some really cool things that I would have never thought about. I would have never thought about the peripheral distraction. That's awesome. So it's already interesting. I'm already hyped to read this. So this is just one of the things that you should look at if you are having trouble meeting length on a paper. And it's not the be-all, end-all. It's not going to be the silver bullet to this process, but it is something you first have to look at. It's something that if you have kids that are having struggles in school or in homeschooling and you're not sure what to tell them what they're writing, like, focus on specific topics and something that piques their interest within that specific topic. Like, you can narrow down probably even more than this one. Should colleges ban laptops in lecture halls? There's probably some other shift or other specific thing in here that somebody that is more curious about it than me or has more experience with it than me, like, yeah, I went to college, but like somebody else probably could see a spin on this that is even more refined and even more interesting, has more weird things going on there. And that's kind of what I like to say, like, find the weird, interesting things that are a little bit unexpected, because that's what you're going to have more fun writing about, and that's what the reader or the teacher or whoever is going to be more pulled in by. That's what's going to engage people in something that is normally a dry academic essay. Find the specific weird twists that you're like, oh wow, I never would have thought that. Like that peripheral distraction. Like, that's super interesting. And interesting comes from being specific and being curious. Okay, so with your topics, be specific, be curious, find those interesting twists that just make you go, huh, I wonder, and start there. If nothing else, just plot out a whole bunch of ideas. Don't start getting into the nitty gritty if you're having a hard time. Find a topic that is in your interest. That's what I always tell my students. First, you have to start with a topic area that you have an interest, a curiosity, habits, hobbies in. Okay, start there. Start in your interest zone, and then find the unique, interesting, weird, curious within that zone. And then you're going to find something that you will like to write about. Even if you don't normally like writing, you're at least going to be like, huh, that is interesting. I need to know about that. Or, huh, maybe. Start there in your interest zone, and then the things that make you go, huh, I wonder. And then you will find cool topics in there to write about. And that will really help you with, number one, having a much better paper just overall, because you're curious about it. You're going to write better things about it. But also, you're going to have an easier time meeting whatever length requirement there is, because you'll have a whole bunch of stuff, a whole bunch of really specific, interesting things that you can discuss, and you're going to meet that word count. Okay, I'm going to do other videos about how to extend your essay, how to make writing better. All right, but if you need more help right now, or if you need interesting books that you need recommended to you, or you just want to hear more nerdy stuff about writing, then go to my newsletter. There's a link in my bio, but I'm also going to make sure the link is pinned in the first comment. So you can just go down to the comments. It should be there. You just click over to that newsletter. You'll get some interesting things about the fourth turning, which is our crisis turning era right now, the things that we're going through. You'll get a handout, a PDF about that just for signing into the newsletter. But I also post stuff all the time, updates about my writing, good books, discussions, and a whole bunch of stuff about how to write better. And also like teaching prompts and things like that. So if you need extra help or interested right now, then make sure to go to my newsletter. And beyond that, I'll see you next time with more content that's going to help you out.